Alright, so I woke up to an article here talking about Sega and Atlus specifically, and this information comes from a SEGA Sammy investors meeting. The president and CEO of SEGA Sammy, Mr. Haruki Satomi, recently discussed with investors the possibility of SEGA and Atlus to raise their games at $70. Now, this is common in the industry right now, right? We've seen just recently The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom from Nintendo with a $70 price tag. This is their first game at $70. Obviously, there's a lot of developers and publishers who jumped in with the $70 price point for their games, including EA, PlayStation, and Microsoft recently as well with Redfall. So $70 is common. Today, I'm here to discuss why I do not think $70 game price for SEGA and Atlus is a good idea, and I want to put the emphasis on this right now. In my mind, it's inevitable. It's gonna happen at some point for sure. This is the video game industry we're talking about, and they're going to raise their prices at some point. Game development is getting more expensive and more expensive every single day. But in terms of SEGA, for a ton of reasons actually, I believe it's not a good move to do it right now. This video is going to be very interesting. I feel like I do want to say this is just my personal opinion. You're totally in the right to disagree. I encourage you to agree or disagree with me. Make sure you drop a comment and let me know what you think of this topic and this discussion here. Drop a thumbs up if you like the video, and if you want more content on anything SEGA and more specifically Atlus, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. So first of all, I know they said if they do $70 game at some point, they will do it on a game-by-game basis, and all the companies say that at some point, right? Nintendo just said it, and for now it's true, right? With Pikmin 4 being $60. In terms of SEGA, I can see it. They could have their big titles like the Yakuza series at $70, Sonic at $70, Persona, SMT $70, and smaller titles, let's say Monkey Ball, or when they bring back Jet Set Radio, I'm not sure if that's even a smaller title anymore, but still they could drop it at 60 or even 50. Samba de Amigo is coming out this summer, and that one is going to be lower than 60 if I recall correctly as well. Now, in terms of why I feel it's a bad move for SEGA specifically, is right now they are doing practices that is not going to work with a $70 price point, in my opinion. Again, they are using very intense practices with DLCs, and that's my polite way to say it, right? In my mind, you cannot drop a $70 game with $50 worth of DLC on day one, and that's something that SEGA does often. Just go back to 2019 when Persona 5 Royal came out, a full price $60 re-release, yes, with a lot of added content from the original Persona 5, but it's still a re-release of Persona 5 2 years after the game first dropped, and there was around $50 worth of paid DLC for a re-release, a full price re-release. And these types of releases are not uncommon at SEGA and Atlus, and those are full price games with insane amount of DLC. That is the first reason why I feel like these types of practices are not going to work at $70. There's another common practice, unfortunately, at SEGA and Atlus that they're commonly using that is not going to help them with a $70 price tag. Let's go back to previous releases like, let's say, Soul Hackers 2, or in terms of SEGA, we can just look at Shin, Like a Dragon. These games, they have digital deluxe edition. And I know what some of y'all are gonna say, oh, but David, this is just an edition of the game. You don't have to buy it if you don't want it. And you're right, I get it. What I'm saying here is that digital deluxe editions of games are basically a way to push DLCs down your big fan's throat, right? That's how they do it. Because if you pay, let's say, $15 extra over the base $60 price, or maybe $70 at some point, right? You pay $15 extra and you get the game early. You get the game 4 or 5 days early, for example, but you get all the DLC. That's why you pay more. So if you don't necessarily care about the DLC, but you want to play the game as early as possible because you're a big fan, you're forced to buy the DLC. And I feel like, again, at $70, a digital deluxe edition is going to not work, or at least not work as much as they think, in my opinion. Now let's get into the big reasons as to why I do not think Sega's ready right now for an increase at $70, and that's $70 price point for a game. It works for high quality games only. If you have a critically acclaimed game, I feel like it can still sell at $70, but once you have a mid game at $70, it's an insta flop. At $60, if you lower the price quickly, it can pick back up for sure. We've seen it time and time again. Let me give some examples. So $70 games that sold very well. First one, God of War Ragnarok by Sony, 94 on Metacritic. That game dropped at 70 and it sold really, really well. Last week, Nintendo, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, 96 on Metacritic. That one is going to sell extremely well. Bad examples, recent bad examples in terms of sales of $70 games. A brand new IP, Calisto Protocol, 69 on Metacritic. That one sold decently if you look at numbers for a new IP, in my opinion, but according to the studio, it underperformed at 69. And that was a $70 game for a new IP. And then you have a bigger IP, a DC IP, Gotham Knights by Warner Brothers. That one at 68 on Metacritic, again, underperformed for how big of an IP this is. If you have games that are kind of mid, if you have games around the 70 mark, low 80 can work in my mind, but anything under 80, I feel like it's going to be tough for a gamer to spend $70 on your game. I live in Canada. In Canada, it's $89.99 plus tax. I live in the most taxed province in Canada. If I buy a game at $89.99, which is what I did for Zelda last week, it cost me $103, tax included, for the game. $103. I'm not rich, far from it, okay? That's a lot of money. And gamers are going to think about what they purchase once you reach that $100 mark, and they are reaching it in a lot of countries around the world once you consider taxes and conversions rate, right? If you look at Sega, you cannot really compare their games to most of the titles that I mentioned today, both the good ones and the bad ones. You cannot really compare in terms of big budget and everything, Tears of the Kingdom or Ragnarok. They don't do these types of games in terms of high production value and quality. Yes, they have high rated titles, but they don't feel like the games that are being sold at 70, those big expensive games like Microsoft first party games or Sony first party games, right? They are in a different category to me. They're kind of like Capcom, big games for sure, but it's different than when you go to first party. The biggest reason for me is Atlus and Sega, they have a reputation with their game prices. They do, they really do. If you read comments from the article, the VGC article that I put on screen before at the beginning of this video, a lot of people are saying this. They're like, hey, if Sega wants to raise their prices at 70, I don't really care. I'm just not gonna buy them day one. They drop in price extremely quickly. That is my main reason, guys. That is my main reason. Look at the games that I previously mentioned. Tears of the Kingdom, God of War Ragnarok, both these games, they're gonna stay $70 for years. Especially Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild is still 60, right? Nintendo, their games, they sell at 60 years after launch. Sony, they used to drop fairly quickly. Now they want to keep value in their games and they don't want to lower their prices as quickly as they used to do. And in terms of first-party Sony titles on PlayStation 5, they've proven that statement, right? If I want to get Horizon Forbidden West, the last Horizon game, that is not an old game and that is still priced fairly high. It's not 70 like Tears of the Kingdom will be from launch to Horizon's date right now. But still, it's not $10 like Sony titles used to be after a year. Sega, that's where we're at, right? Recent examples are easy to bring up. Persona 5 Royal last year, it dropped in under a month from 60 to 40. And I'm talking about the remastered version of P5 or the one version that came out on Nintendo, Xbox, PC, etc. Sonic Frontiers, big success, 3 million units sold. Dropped at 60 on day one. And it was 40 under a month. Hell, even more recently, Shin, Like a Dragon, a game that I like quite a bit from RGG Studio, very solid game. It did well critically as well. It dropped at $40 in its release month, on the same month that the game dropped, 40. If you charge 70, that's almost half off after a month. Your fans are noticing these things. And I'll be honest, I am a very big SEGA fan. I am. Especially Atlus, anything Atlus. I'm a sim pretty much, right? Same thing for RGG Studio. I'm a Super Monkey Ball fan. I like a lot of Sonic games. I am looking forward to Crazy Taxi if that's coming back. Jet Set Radio as well. I love Sakura Wars. I love a ton of titles from SEGA and Atlus. I want them to succeed, and this is why I wanted to put this video out there, just to basically start a discussion. I feel like it's not the right time for SEGA and Atlus to move on to $70 games for the reasons that I mentioned. They're gonna do it at some point. If they fix their business practices with DLCs and early buyers getting DLC for higher price, if they make sure they drop quality release and they pick and choose the right games for $70 price point, if you put your Persona 6 at 70, it's gonna work. If you put your Samba de Amigo, your next game, at 70, I do not know how it's gonna go, how it's gonna turn out. So it's a wait and see scenario here. I am looking forward to the day SEGA moves on to $70, not as a consumer, because again, it's $100 for a game here in Canada where I live, but just for the company to grow even more and be more successful, because again, I'm a big fan. Thank you all so much for watching this quick video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And again, make sure to drop a quick thumbs up if you like this different style of video of mine. Thank you for watching.